All right, we're good to go. So this face, you're going to get very used to seeing this version of Eve. So yesterday we spoke about Adam and Eve. We spoke about the maternal DNA and how I found that there was a start codon in the maternal DNA. And that was this sort of second half of the puzzle. And this is what this journey, throughout this journey, we go over both. So we go over the normal sort of DNA, the nuclear DNA of the two strands, but then we actually see the other side of the two strands of the maternal DNA. And so we actually look at the differences in the gates, in the amino acids, and what they stand for. And that's why I say this is brand new information. This is the second half of the story. And it really starts to narrate a different shift. And if you know about the gates and where gate 61 is, the star codon of Eve, then you'll know that that's a really significant moment in how, especially our Pluto transits, that's moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, and how Adam and Eve is this point of this sort of Capricorn into Aquarius for that Pluto of the rebirth into the next evolution of humanity. So really exciting to see even just those two. That was such a gift, but there's so much more of differences in the maternal DNA and the nuclear DNA. So this makes a big difference when it comes to looking at the gates, right? So in a way, we're looking at the biology to then relook at the astrology, because like Bella said about Capricorn and what we feel about Capricorn and what we feel about gate 61, it's been seen up until this time from a certain perspective. And then when you see the other half of the story, it starts to recalibrate your thoughts about that. So if you have certain gates in your profile, if it's a Venus or your Mars or whatever it may be, you're going to get the second half narrative to all of those gates. And so you can map out all of your astrology. And the one thing I love about the human design system is that, and even if you haven't got your profile yet, you can do that and connect with Bella about what's the best way to go about that, but you end up with 26 different gates. So there's a whole load to look at. And then especially if you go into things like the asteroids and all of those, it's like this huge profile of gates. And so that's why I say this, when you start to look at this as a whole system, that you're going to learn every gate and all of the DNA that's connected to it, then you can start to go through your natal chart piece by piece and start to put things together. And especially yesterday, where we shared about the star code of independence, if you might find that you have, say, 8 gates within that star codon. And so that starts to bring a narrative of like, your life, your processes, depending what planets are there. That's about you stepping into, your self sovereignty, stepping into the idea that you're perhaps meant to feel separate. You're meant to go it alone. You're meant to understand what independence is in this incarnation, in this world. And so that's the beauty of all of this. It starts to create a new story to aspects that have been there and perhaps aspects that you've been working with for perhaps many years. Or is there anything you want to add to that, Bella?
Yeah, this is the same wheel that we're always looking at. So at the end of the day, we're going into all the facets of this wheel. We're having the zodiac signs somewhere in the sky, that whether we have the true sky or the tropical, we have decided that it's somewhere. So you see the zodiac signs here, and we have all the gates or all the hexagrams. And then we can see it as the changing seasons, at the change of the yin and the yang through the hexagrams. So that's the wheel. And this is the wheel that we're going to explore. And I feel that you're connecting it back to the body graph and human design. Really, what I've been trying to have us all also include into that view is that we're all always walking the wheel, and that following the sun through the wheel, because it goes through all the zodiac signs and all the gates, all the hexagrams in one year, it also gives us the opportunity to connect with all these archetypes that are in the wheel, whether we're speaking about zodiac signs, we're speaking about the archetypes of the hexagrams, or if you have read the Lost Octave, we're speaking about the deacons. So there are so many different ways of understanding the wheel. And this is the wheel that we are spiraling and spiraling through. And hopefully, every time we spiral, there's a bit more wisdom, a bit more love, a bit more acceptance as we are going through the spirals of the wheel of life, of evolution, of existence.
Amazing. Yeah, great. So yesterday we spoke about that the star codons can be in different size of groups. And there's this beautiful thread of where there's this idea of lovers within gates and how they sort of connect. And these are like new geometries that the unfolds for us to explore. And so a star codon can be just one hexagram because it may be a sort of a sovereign important point, a bit like the star codon of Eve, and that's sovereign. And then the star codon of Adam is like a sovereign, but yet they also then work together. They're connected as lovers. And then that's part of a greater whole that we saw yesterday of the star codon of wonderment in the 3D. And then it moves into the star codon of independence of the 16 gates in the fourth dimension. And of course, we go through even higher dimensions than that. And so you can see that it's all combined. But one of the beautiful ways through this was to take it very simply and see some of these pairings. And that's when we expressed about the star codon of sovereignty yesterday. So again, the same thing. I'm just going to give you an idea of how we move through, like each week when we go through one of these, which we tackle each week. And so again, this idea of that when this came through the star codon of sovereignty, the title was being born ready. And there's these things called different channels. There's transformation channels, there's integration channels, there's embodiment channels. And so these are all different ways in which this DNA starts to work. So here we have an integration channel, right? So here we have integrating pressure into privilege. And I would say that that's one of the most magical things that I've seen in these star codons is this idea of that there's so much pressure, right? The container to learn, the container to consume all of this information. But what a privilege this is to explore this. And so again, you can translate that into your life. Whenever you feel pressured in your life, you can shift that into this idea of how privileged am I to experience this sense of pressure? Because normally when you're feeling a sense of pressure, there's normally this gold. There's normally this sense of there's gems in there, and that's what you can see in the picture. And I'll go into that a little bit later on. So again, I'll read just so you can feel the sense of this transmission and what these two gates are. So the star codon of sovereignty is bestowed upon us at various stages throughout our lives. This is the feeling of growing into yourself, of maturing and knowing more of your true essence. And so I'll just take that for a moment because within each sentence, with each paragraph, and the transmission's obviously longer than this, we start to see that sovereignty isn't this end goal. It's not this sort of like we have to wait in order to be fully aligned to feel a sense of sovereignty. It's that as we do these rites of passage, as we go through different ages of time, then we're called to really step into ourself, right? So we can no longer sort of prevent it. We can no longer hold it off any longer. You're called to step into that, into more of who you truly are. And it says that many crumble, many people crumble. They recede and decline the invitation of sovereignty. Right? Really interesting. This is when you realize that nobody is ever ready. There is always more you can do, learn, and prepare for, but life calls you out. The only thing to do is know you were born ready. Integrating pressure into privilege as a rite of passage. Step into what already is, and whomever does this never looks back again. And you can see this like beautiful feeling that's coming across about what sovereignty is. It's about making that conscious step into really what you already are. We just don't fully recognize that yet. And that's where sovereignty is. It's having that courage to say, okay, I'm going to do this course. I'm going to go on this healing journey. I'm going to go into something that may be painful because ultimately there's gems there that I'm going to renew myself and start to recognize myself as more of a wholeness. And so this is a beautiful idea that came through these pairings of gates. And then we can see here that we write about exactly what the zodiac sign is in Libra, and we can see the sign that is ruled by Venus. We can see the amino acid. And then underneath here, I've added this in because this is part of the transmission as well. It's a really pivotal part about how to experience these gates. Because it's all right to speak about this and maybe even feel some of the beautiful words. But this goes really deep into how do we experience star codon of sovereignty. And so it's about relationships. It's about the relational aspects, which is interesting because it almost feels counterintuitive because sovereignty often can feel very independent. It's like me stepping into this, my sort of life purpose, what I'm about. But actually you figure that out by connecting to other people. And obviously that's where the Venus and the Libra uh, essence is there about the duality of balancing things. And so this is a mastery path. And of course, that makes a lot of sense with sovereignty. It's like it's something that you have to work on. You have to practice this. You have to keep refining it over and over and over again. And you do that through relationships. So instead of perhaps feeling that relationships collapsed or I tried to step into my sovereignty and then people in my life fell away and seeing that as maybe like a failure or I did something wrong, it's like, no, you learn from that and you start to sharpen your tool of being able to relate with a much clearer message. And then the same thing we have here about the star law, that this is the crux. And if the lost octave and the deacons, then you'll know that that point, that's the like the Christ cross. So in the sky, there's actually a crucifixion cross in the sky. And this is where we end up with why we have biblical narratives. All of the star stories I can unfold the Bible through the star law. And in my belief, that's really where it all came from. That this wasn't about people. This was about the energies, the essence, the archetypes, the consciousness, and that we actually play out these narratives on the earth. And so this crucifixion, as you can see, it's a sense of sort of sacrifice. It's a sense of that perhaps you're having to face something that is quite daunting to step into. But actually, after that is that resurrection is to move into your spiritual self. And so lupus is the wolf, right? It's the animal nature within us that gets sacrificed. And so when you start to piece this all together, you get an idea of what sovereignty truly is. And again, in the subtle bodies, one of the things I love about this is it starts to express about which part of our aura is this connected to. And so this is the highest sort of body within the aura, which is the logoic body. And it's not very well known and not many people speak about it because it's seen as this sort of transcendental idea, like the logos. So like the word or the consciousness itself. And so it makes sense that sovereignty would be right at that sort of level of, in order to step into this, I really do need to sacrifice an aspect of myself that doesn't serve me anymore. I need to step into who I truly am. And that's why I say that many recede, many decline this invitation, right? Which is ironic because we want this, we want to know ourselves. But yet when we're invited to do that and to step forward, it's a stepping forward into the unknown, or that's how it feels. When actually it's about just stepping into who we really are underneath everything else. And the chemical component to this, the chemiluminescence. So this is a dopamine channel of reward, right? So there's a lot of speak about dopamine because when we're endlessly scrolling on a phone or we're tapped into something we're addicted to, we get rewarded, right, for the stimulus that's kicking off in our hormones inside us. And so this channel is a dopamine channel. So there is this sense of reward, right? And so animals, when you're training animals, that we use this sort of pathway, right? So you make a dog sit and then you give it a treat. And then the reward circuitry starts to allow you to understand things. And this is how it is, as I say, this refinement of keep moving through to find the gem. And as I said, this is an integration channel. So it's not so much about transformation. It's not so much about that you're having to go through the alchemy path. It's more that it's a recognition that you're already this. And so you're moving into it, you're merging into who you are. And so that's why it's more of this sense of an integration. It's just the only reason why we feel that we aren't a sovereign being is because there's this perceived separation. And so that's why it takes a bit of time to sort of blend, to merge, to pull it together so that you really start to feel that oneness in it. And so I just go back to this image to finalize this. In the star law, there's like secrets within the secrets. And this is like a theme in this embodiment process, and you'll see more. Is that in the cross constellation, there's a really beautiful aspect, and it's a bit of a secret, so I'm happy to share it with you. But and actually there's like a Pandora's box of gems, and it's right there in the constellation. And so, isn't that interesting that at the very point of the crucifixion, of the greatest sacrifice of, say, the identity of who you were, it's showing you that right there is the box of gems, the wish fulfilling jewel. It's right there, and the actual cross symbolizes like the tree, right? The mother tree. And so all of this symbolism is in there. And that's really where the gems are, that resurrection into your spiritual self or into your true self. And so that's why that image is there. It's just to say that there is a secret when you give up something that you feel that is hard to do. At the end is an amazing reward, and it's not necessarily a dopamine reward of sort of satisfaction. It's the reward of truly feeling this gate. So that's to give you another idea of how would explore something like this. And of course, we go into much deeper layers, and we start to discuss this amongst ourselves, and really sort of pick apart this transmission and to feel what that feels like for each person. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add into that better, or how that's made you feel about this star codon.
Yeah, like I said yesterday, this new perspective that we get here to look at what for many of us are the Libra gates in human design. So the 46 and the 18, the 57, the 32, the 48. This is a new way of looking at it. Also, most of those gates are in the splenic center. If we are into the gene keys, maybe we have heard about the developmental phases that we work with in a psychological sense from 0 to 7, and 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. And they are also coded by these two gates, which is going to be for the core wound, for example. So I am tying it back to all the ways I knew each gate before. And now I'm getting a new perspective. And not only am I getting a new perspective, I also get a new pairing where maybe I haven't thought about the 8 and 58 because they are not exactly next to each other in the wheel. There's another gate in between them. So that's the first layer for me in a more logical sense, that I get a new way to tune into information that sometimes, at least in my case, and I know many of you here, you're so good at the human design or the gene keys or even the astrology. So we become a little bit fixed. Okay, Libra is ruled by Venus and it's about perfection, but it can be this and that, right? And this is a completely new way where, yes, it's really good that we can weave, and I'm a sixth line. I like to see the overview and then I like to explore. And at the same time, this is another layer, and there is a different application with this, which is a feeling sense. And I've told you before, if you're in the inner circle, for me, I feel emotionally deeply touched by this code of sovereignty because it's so connected to the work that I have done for the last 6 years with Ashley. And it's so interesting that it's in that quarter, that part of the wheel that has the channel of integration, where like we see the master is relational. So I've really been able to live through this and explore it and unlock it together with another person who happens to have the 18, I think it's her Venus, and her Mercury is the 57. I have my design Mars and also in my Saturn. This is something that touches me deeply because I can see from just this little snippet, it's not the whole thing on the coding of sovereignty, but I know that we have taken those steps together in the last few years. And even just like born ready, integrating pressure into privilege, that's where these keys, whether we have them or not, but in this case, it's so obvious. So it's so easy that we have them. this is something that we unconsciously, possibly embarked on. And that was something that we were unlocking together. That's the felt sense of those star codons. I've had a similar thing with each one of them. Like it's taking me somewhere where I have a resonance with them because there's something in my experience that's been touched by that. And also, it opens then a portal to say, okay, this is how I walked through it for the last 6 years unconsciously. What happens when I become aware? What happens when I become aware of this portal of sovereignty that lives within me because of my own activations, but also of being in a group with other people who are going to hold those gates, those keys in places that they come and they connect with my aura, with my makeup, with my geometry. So,
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that the good thing with this is, like I said, you can go into any of these facets. So as we go through this, it may be like the logoic body is like, wow, I may or may not have heard of it, or what is that? And so then your focus becomes more about feeling into that with the theme of sovereignty, with the theme of independence. And so that's why I say that it's going to keep on giving, because all these little facets build up the picture, and that you get to continually explore into it. So I'll go into this, and I made this as a sort of representation of the wheel. But if you look into this, you'll actually see that it is a 13 wheel. And this is like an even proportioned 13 wheel. And the reason why I've done this is because these sense of numbers and how the mathematics and the geometries work out. 13, the divine feminine number, the 13th zodiac sign, it's so important. And I found that the star codons really work well with this 13 number. And that was really beautiful, because in the Lost Octave, that was a huge revelation that the 13th zodiac essentially was Sophia, the mother of dragons. And so when you do this in this geometry, this links deeply esoterically into how you actually build archways, right? And it's known in sort of Masonic traditions as like the Royal Arch. And all of these things, they don't belong to particular people. This is just actually how buildings are built. And then so it's like the hexagrams were built from sort of yarrow sticks to start, and then it became sort of a philosophy, and then it sort of developed more and more and more. So in the way the ancients did things, they took the simple ways in which they worked or built things and then put philosophies into it. And so my background is through the building trade. That's how I started my early career. And so when you're trying to create an archway, there's this sort of geometry mathematics to it. And the number 13 is the perfect balance of an arch. And so when you can see here, you can see that right on the summer solstice, which is actually at the bottom here because it's reversed, like you'd see in the human design wheel. So right at the pinnacle of the summer solstice, it's in Cancer. And then directly opposite that at the winter solstice, it's still in that beautiful link between Sagittarius and Capricorn. So this brings me into this idea of numbers, and then we're going to build onto what the star codons are in terms of numbers. So in the center, you may recognize that beautiful geometry, and I love drawing this all the time. It's so therapeutic. It's this sense of there's these five facets of the star codons. If you remember rightly, there's those five main groupings: independence and convergence and omnia, providence and resurgence, right? They're the five main groupings. So with this, it was like, wow, that's a really beautiful thing. That's a pentagram, right? So that's the five elements. Well, what you'll notice is that the Venus rose has these same geometries into it that are also the Fibonacci numbers. So we end up with this five, the five star codon main groups, then the eight, which is the octave, which is also the Venus rose calibration in the sky. And then it goes into 13, and that's like your 13 signs. And they're like harmonic numbers. And this is what I found within the star codons, that they're all harmonic numbers. And so I'm going to share with you now that how many star codons are there, because there seems to be a lot, right? And it's like, well, how many are there? And do we have that many amino acids? Do we have more? Like, what is this? And so today I'm going to reveal the number. which is a harmonic of 13, because there are 52 star codons. Right? And actually, even in since we've even started this webinar, I actually found a couple of extra ones which I'll put in, which were hiding within other ones. And so this is the way the star codons evolve. It's sort of every time that we go through portals, it seems like there's secrets within secrets. It seems like there's you see the initial outlay of it, and then as you move through it, something else is revealed. And that's what I love about this. It's sort of this box of gems that you keep moving through, keep finding these amazing things. So this is essentially why it came about doing this as 52 weeks. We have the 40 days, the 40 nights sort of analogy to move through the first 40 weeks. And then we have the promised land of the last 12 weeks. And this is how we start to move through of that there are, how beautiful is it that there's 52 of these? Well, if you know about the wheel, well, then you'll know that there's 52 weeks in a year. So isn't that interesting that there's the same amount of codons as there are weeks in a year? And of course, the lost octave was all about this number 72. And then within the star codons, it's showing me 52 over and over and over again. And 52 is 4 times 13. So then you can see the Fibonacci numbers that work together. They work with Venus, they work with the 13 sign astrology. And then when you use the quadrinity, like the quadrinity psychology, the 4 process, it then links into the 52 star codons of 52 weeks. So this is really how you can see the harmonics in anywhere, any different facet you go into, it's all sharing the same harmonic. And then this shows you a really beautiful picture is that there are 52 playing cards. Right? So in the original playing card set, there are 52 playing cards. Well, isn't that interesting that the number of star codons is also the number of playing cards? And so this is like the DNA is reflecting in these old ancient technologies of divination. And of course, that leads us into the tarot cards because the tarot cards are made up with the original playing cards. And so the tarot cards, we have the 22 major arcana cards, and there are sort of 20 main amino acids, and there's actually another 2. So there's 22 amino acids. So again, we're looking at the fact that there's the playing cards plus the major arcana. They're all in this symmetry of numbers. They all add up to the same. So it's showing that as we move through the star codons, we're activating every archetype, we're activating all the cards, we're activating all of these star laws as we move through it in this way. And so the minor arcana, there's actually 56 because they added 4 extra into it to make the 78 full tarot cards. But now we can actually see that because the playing cards are 52, so we've now got this beautiful mirror that the star codons not only do the major arcana, but they're connected to all of the playing cards of the minor arcana as well. So it's the entire set. And as I said, I just found a few extra star codons since we've been doing this. So that's bringing up to, which I predict that there's probably going to be 56, right, to fully anchor this. And so these are the sort of things that if you're used to divination, you use cards or you use tarot or all of these things, Fibonacci sequences in any of your work and research, you can see that the star codons are harmonically activating all of this also. So one of the things I loved about this as well, you find this in all kind of crazy places. So obviously with the current times, the world stage is very much about America and what's been happening there, especially to the Western sort of social media. And so when you look at that, the flag even, and flags are really good telltale signs because there's actually some star constellations on certain flags in certain countries, which is like a whole nother deep rabbit hole to go into. But when you look, you can actually see that there are 13 stripes. Well, isn't that interesting that this number 13 again is connected into the flag. And then we look at the stars. Well, how many stars are there in the American flag? Because this is a really interesting thing. Because if you just, without counting them, if you just try and remember them, a lot of people seem to think it's 52, right? And so the actual answer, there's 50 there. But there's actually two other places, Puerto Rico and DC, that aren't actually states. So there is this sense that there's 50, but there's like two that kind of are, that kind of aren't. And this is what's similar to the star codons, is that there's like an amino acid, and then inside that there's like another portal to something else, and then there's like a gate, and there's another star codon inside something else. So this is why I feel like we are in the movement of its evolution, and that's why it's sort of not a rigid system. It's like as we explore new findings in the DNA, then that becomes a new star codon. And so that's why I think it's beautiful. This ever fresh expression is happening. And as we start to introduce things like the 13th zodiac sign and become more familiar with that as integrating that into our normal narrative, we can see that that's starting to reflect and ripple out into all of these other different areas. So I don't know if you want to share anything about that, but how you feel.
Yeah, isn't it magical? I like the symmetry of this, the symmetry on the wheel, the symmetry with the tarot, the symmetry with the playing cards, with the year, even in the flag. Wherever you look, you start to see the magic. Once you have seen it, you can't unsee it anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I say the Fibonacci sequence, the natural growth of life, the golden ratio is actually linked to the DNA. And so that shows us that the Venus cycle and the DNA are so connected in their resonance of mathematics and geometry. So we are now getting into more about the embodiment processes. And it's very, very specific in the star codons. And I was so, so happy to see this when it came through, because if you recognize this chakra, it's the throat chakra. And this sense of being able to speak, being able to open that throat center links to the idea of the octave and music, right? And so isn't it so great that we can now start to see that the star codons are directly connected and activated through the throat center. And the throat center is super, super deep in all of its wisdom. But we've got some really great goodies in here for you. So essentially, we are going to be going through a throat chakra activation. And there's been different ways in which people have done it in the past in all different types of mystery schools. But for me, my love is the sort of ancient Vedic systems and going all the way back to the ancient tantric texts. And that's really sort of my background of going into what is mantra, going into that ancient technology of sort of like the first technology we had within this fifth race came from there. And so we're actually going to be understanding how to activate your throat chakra. And what was revealed as I went into this was that we are actually going to find out what the star language of Venus is. And this is amazing because this language, this star language of Venus, this activates and is linked to every single star codon. So every single star codon has a sound, has a resonance, has an expression, and that's directly linked to Venus. And so this was just an amazing thing to to see that again, that connection on an ancient technology in the tantric text is also linked to the celestial planes, and it's something that's linked to the DNA. And when you bring those things together, that's why these embodiment practices are going to be so powerful to do. And they're really simple. And I think the best systems are the simplest ones. They may have a lot of nuance and intricacies, but the idea is that in order to feel this, they have to be something that we can do easily and apply and to experience. And so this is where it took me on this beautiful journey of the vows of creation. And so we use vows. And I was thinking about this last night after the call. we use vowels in really interesting expressions, right? So when something hurts, we say ow, like ow, right? When we're trying to think of something, we'll say, right? And so when we like something, we're like, ooh. And so it's taking us right back to these first sort of child sounds that we make to sort of express our feelings. And so we can start to use this and how it's connected to the DNA, how it's connected to the throat chakra to start to purify these layers within us, purify that DNA, activate the DNA, because the throat chakra is known as the purification center of the body. And so, this sense of being able to express ourselves and share and to go into this transmission, to have that courage to interact and to expose ourselves as to, I have this, I experienced this, and through this star codon, I can step through it and move into, this next evolution, this next dimension of experiencing. And so these vows of creation have been used in all different traditions in different ways. And we really go into how to use vows, how to express them, and how to actually create the resonance within our body to activate it. But I love the fact that when you start to think about how you use vowels in your life, the things that I came up with were just these basic sounds of things that we perhaps do quite unconsciously. And when you go into the deep esoteric studies, it's really interesting because there's these things called magic sigils. And it's an ancient sort of practice where you would actually take a word and they actually take out the vowels and then they just use consonants to create these magic sigils. And when I read about it, I thought, well, that's an why would you take out the vowels? Because the vowels they are the powerhouse, right? So the mitochondrial DNA is the energy, it's the Shakti, it's the powerhouse of the cell. And so the vowels are exactly the same. They replicate that. They are the thing that animates. They are the thing that creates, that births into being. And so when I look at some of the ancient technologies, I sort of think, well, okay, that's about trying to cast magical spells or incantations. But why would we do that when we can use literally the vowels of creation in our speech to activate us into other dimensions and to purify our bodies, mind, thoughts, emotions, all of these things. And when you look at the petals of the throat chakra, well, there's 16 petals. And so if you remember rightly in the star codon of independence, there was 16 gates. So again, we see this beautiful link that the petals of the lotus of the throat is directly linked to the petals of the star codons in these groupings. And this is where you start to see all of these ancient technologies are all merging together and they all start to bring it into a cohesive narrative. And this is the sort of, that's why I say that this transmission is very much, it pieces everything together. There isn't an answer that you can't know through this because no matter where you're from, what background you enjoy, what sort of thing you're into, you'll be able to find these correlations. And this to me was a beautiful thing to actually activate the 16 petals of the throat. And through my studies, there's a tantric practice, there's a tantric way to do this. And this is often known as secret mantra. And today's all this idea about secrets. There's tons of secrets because that's like the mystery of this. But it's not that they're secret that they're trying to be withheld from you. It's more that it's you have to go through them in order to reveal it. So it's like all of these sort of like a treasure hunt of like the divine, right? So it's all placed in different facets of the DNA, but you have to actually go and search for them. You have to recognize them. You have to activate them in order for them to become part of your daily life. And so we're actually going to do this. It's a very simple but very very profound tantric secret mantra. And so every week we're going to be discussing that, and I'm also going to be giving you the different parts. So it's going to be like this piece by piece code that it starts to build, and then by the time we've done the year, you'll be able to know, activate all of this in this sort of like practice. So we're going to be building up a practice rather than just say, right, you do this and it's overwhelming. Every single week, you're going to get a piece and you work with that piece until you know it. And then you move and we give you the next piece. And so that's why I say at the end of all of this, you're going to really know this because you walked through it and you've done it and you've understood each fractal part. And then that's when you can feel your wholeness. So I'll hand it over to you, Bella. How do you feel about the throat chakra?
I love it. Those of you that know me, you know that I'm so often speaking about the involution, that yes, there is the evolution of consciousness and the connection to spirit and heaven and God. And at the same time, there is the involution where we're taking consciousness and we're bringing it into form, into embodiment, together with Shakti back into our soul, in our bodies. And for me, that we are speaking today about the throat chakra and showing the symbol that has that triangle where we are in the throat chakra, we are manifesting in a unique way. When I see this, I'm feeling into how it comes through, for example, gate 43, like that insight that comes in. And I'm thinking about one of the star codons. I'm not going to say what the name is, but we have one of the gates, the 34, that's very much about that kind of evolution. We're evolving, and then with a 43, it's so much of what's coming in and what do we do with what comes in. I also know that for this specific star codon, it's connected to Lyra and the harp. Then I'm thinking, oh, the harp, and these are the vocal cords, and these are the vibrations. So these are opening up layers, and all of us have different revelations and different remembrance of these things, depending on our vessel, where we come from, what we're here to express and manifest. What makes me really excited about all these is exactly as you say. It's not that we're giving you a PDF with a written exercise. Okay, do this and check it off when you've done it. No, it is very much initiations that are done. And it's almost like we're opening the petals of something step by step by step until it becomes second nature. The same thing as we learn to speak a language as we're a child and we don't have the vocal cords completely activated. It takes some time to be able to make those vowels, to be able to speak the language, the star language, or whatever language it is, and activating the cords and then also using them for a sacred practice, which for me is the tantric path, the tantric mantras, the tantric circulation, sublimation of the Kundalini. So knowing the geometry of this, what's behind it, and also what it does in terms of that of consciousness into form, so that we can live it, walk it, feel it, share it, be it. That's for me the most exciting of all this.
Mm. Yeah, so beautiful. And it's really auspicious. And that's why I said it was interesting that this is so much about languages. And the Lost Octave was about the translations of Latin and Hebrew. And so there's this theme of that it allows us to connect to all languages. There's kind of like all languages come back to the sense of the vowels. And so this is when you can start to see that once you know that code of the universal languages and the star language of Venus, then it starts to ripple out into all the different dialects all around the world. And it's this beautiful connection here of the throat chakra, because the throat chakra is harmonically connected to the sacral chakra. And so it's got this link of the Shakti energy that we spoke about Eve, about all life. It's about how do we move the Shakti energy up and through and out into the throat. And then the same way that the divine comes down into us through our thoughts and our perceptions. But then it's very difficult for a lot of people to express what they experience. And so this is that bridging gap of that you'll be able to think about the words that you use and how you construct it. And then you'll also be able to express how you feel, how you can express that experience. And that's what we really want to get to at the end of the program. So just to sort of confirm on this, we're not going to be learning like Vedic mantras. That's not what this is about. We're going back to the building blocks of all language. That's what this is about. It's not about sort of chanting mantras and doing it 108 times and that's your practice. Like that If you want to do that afterwards, then great. But this is showing the like the star codons. It's showing you the building blocks of life, the building blocks of sound, and it's like understanding the grammar of that and how that reverberates, how that sounds through you. And for me, doing this, it's like, how do I best write that transmission? How do I best convey this whole star codon into something that's comprehensive and something that other people can understand? Because if I didn't have the throat chakra activated, I wouldn't be able to, like Bella said, pull that from conceptual thought and experience into manifestation. And so the star codons are like this tribute of once you activate the throat chakra, this has been a super quick process from Lionsgate to now. All of this work has been formulated and laid out, and now we're here conveying it with you. And that's a sort of a to show you that how beautiful it is when we purify through through the throat. So that's one part of the embodiment practice that we do. And then we come on to this, and some of you may have seen this in the website. And I have to say, when this came through, this is like, this is one of those things that's as auspicious as the I Ching. So it comes from that kind of lineage, that kind of ilk. It's one of those things that's, it's another way of essentially moving into the book of life. And again, it's this idea of the secret. Like, what is the secret? The secret is that you have to do it. That's the secret. The secret is you can know it all, but you have to do it. You have to move through it. You have to experience it because other than that, it's just a book of writing. The bows mean nothing unless you feel them. And that's why all these things are these secret compartments, secret codes. It just means that it's always going to be secret to you until you actually physically experience this in the body. And so the secret of the golden lotus, this is like one of those beautiful titles. And when I saw it in my meditation, it's really interesting that I saw this blossoming of this golden lotus. So this has a deep history. And this is actually a book, a text that has been around the world. And it's one of the, it's a very ancient text. It was formulated originally around 700 AD and it wasn't written down. So, like expressed in the Lost Octave was never written down as a teaching because it's the master code for all of the gates. And it's like I say, it's the hotel key that opens all the doors in the hotel. And so when these processes that we're sharing today, these were like initiation processes that you would spend 10 years, 12 years with a master, with a guru, and then master and guru would overlight your whole process and give you bits and pieces that you would have to go through. And so we're in this position, fortunately, at this time where we've evolved in our consciousness to where we can take on these things in this way. And so this oral tradition from 700 AD, it sort of evolved and then it finally got different parts got written down. And it's not actually connected to one particular religion or one particular sort of sect. What happened was that this actual text or this transmission had different influences over time. So it started in ancient China and it was actually an ancient Taoist practice. So sort of like a bit like a Zen practice. And it's about inner alchemy. And so the golden lotus is the final birthing, the blossoming of once you've done that inner alchemy work. And obviously gold is that sort of metaphorical philosopher's stone, the immortal body, the golden elixir, the Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Sophianic consciousness, whatever you want to describe it as. It's this process of how do we get from here to recognize ourselves as that immortal self. And so through different iterations, it came through and then it was finally translated by Wilhelm Reich. And what's interesting is there's loads of different translations about this, and they call it the secret of the golden flower. And so you can do your research on this and look into it, and you'll see that a lot of different masters over many years have taken this, like the I Ching, and put their own commentary on it. They've gone into this and then they describe it. And this translation by Wilhelm Reich, a lot of people say is, not the best translation. There's a few things. That's what happens in translation. But famously, this sort of got very popularized because it was looked at by Carl Jung through that psychology view. And it's really interesting because this text is notoriously difficult to try and westernize. And that's what Carl Jung went into this and tried to put psychology into something that sort of vastly transcendental, but vastly that inner alchemy of embodiment. And so when you're just looking at this through the mind, that's why these translations and the criticisms of the translations and the commentaries, it's like you can't just use this with a mental approach, because the whole point, it was meant to be about astrology. It was meant to be about working with the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, meant to be about understanding the minerals, the materials of our body and our consciousness of our body and all of our faculties. And so it's beautiful because it has influences from everywhere. It has this Taoist sort of philosophy in there. It has sort of aspects of Buddhism, even aspects of Christianity kind of got woven into there as it sort of was written down in different views. And so I'll just read you a bit from the book, right? So you can actually buy this. There's different translations of it. But this sentence came through that wanted to be shared today. And it says, the beauties of the highest heavens, so the stars, and the marvels of the sublimest realms are all within the heart, where the perfectly open and aware spirit concentrates. So you can feel it has that very sort of Taoist Zen koan, like bite-sized piece for you to really go into and start to understand, like, what is that feeling? Like, what is it trying to convey? How do we work with this? And so that's sort of like the philosophy. That's how the book is. It's very disembodied, right? So if you were to read the book or read this transmission, there's nothing about embodiment. It's very much a sort of philosophical thing. Now, the reason why it's in the Star Codons is because, to me, it was revealed as very much an embodiment practice of inner alchemy. And so this happened through a very, very beautiful sequence within the hexagrams. And this is a sequence that I've not seen anywhere. This was something that came through in this transmission of a certain way in which the hexagrams move in order to allow this blossoming from within. And that's what this idea is, that you have the divinity inside of you. It just needs to move from the seed into the full blossoming. And of course, that's the symbolism of awakening the seventh line in the hexagram, the crown chakra. That's all linked into this. And as I shared in the Lost Octave, the crown chakra, the crown is never worn on your head. The crown is worn on the heart. And that's where we find the seventh line is actually inside the hexagram. So you have the 6 lines of the hexagram. The seventh line, like the seed of life, it's in the center, right? It's blossoming from within you. And so this is where it came through to use this as an embodiment practice. And so Confucius called it the open center, so the heart space, or this blossoming. He called it the open center. The Buddhists call it the pedestal of awareness, right? So you can see these different ways in which people have translated this and decided to pick out certain things. And then the Taoists call it the ancestral earth. And as soon as I saw this, I just smiled, because this whole thing, this Star Codons, the maternal DNA, it's about our ancestry through Mother Earth, going back to first Eve. And so the golden lotus is about the ancestral earth. It's about retracing all of those meridian lines, those nadis, alighting everything inside of us, awakening the kundalini, awakening the spirit in through the body. And then some other names for this is, like, they called it the yellow court, which goes back to I think it's the Tang or the Chang dynasty, where there was all this sort of sense of the yellow emperor and all of these kind of Lao Tzu philosophies. And it was all this sort of yellow energy and like this symbolized for the sun, for the golden blossoming. And things like they call it the mysterious past. And so that's the star codons, right? It's the mysterious past. We're retracing our steps in order to awaken in this moment. And then one of the symbols is the primal opening. So again, this what is the first Eve, primal feminine? What is the first birthing of all of this? And so we're not going to be going through that book and that philosophical teaching. What happened in the star codons is it came through as that was like the essence to create this embodiment practice of moving through this inner alchemy with that sort of lineage. And so that's what this book is about. This book isn't assigned to any one lineage. Each different it's evolved like the book of changes. It's evolved over time. And for the star codons, it's evolved into this understanding of an embodiment alchemical practice. So just to show you what that looks like, is this is how it came to me through this transmission, is that you can see the spine, the human spine. And that's the difference, right, between us and the animal kingdom is the ability to be upright, like Homo erectus, right? That we were risen, we raised ourselves. And so we have a completely different outlook to the animal kingdom that are on all fours. And so this idea of the spine has been, again, this idea that it's the tree of life, that this is where the Sushumna channel, the central channel of energy that runs through, and everything branches off of this, like the branching of the tree. And again, it goes back to that Adam and Eve story. What is the tree? What is the tree of New Lemuria? And for us, it's our spine. And of course, this has been given different names, like Jacob's ladder. And so this is when you can see that the star codons, these lovers, these are the two tracks, and they bridge, right? So what you're looking at as this Jacob's ladder of 33 rungs of the vertebrae, well, they're all laid out with the star codons. And so as we go through each of the star codons, we can actually find within our bodies, within the spine, where exactly that connects to. And so then we can start to stack and go through our spine. And that's where the seed starts to move through the Shakti, through that stem of the lotus to then blossom out as the thousand petal lotus on the crown. And so this is the beauty that we get to go into. We get to learn about our physical form. We get to see how the star codons are linked. And we have this sort of process of going through our own spine and moving through, bridging heaven and earth. And that's sort of those ancient ways. And now we actually have a whole structure and system to do that. And that means that the star codons, each of the star codons is linked to a particular part of the spine. And that's a really beautiful thing that I haven't seen how auspiciously hexagrams can be linked to the human spine. And through the DNA, this is what made it possible, right? So this is like the structure. And then you have the dragon, right? The Shakti that weaves through every rung and it makes its way up as you raise your consciousness, raise your energy through it. And of course, this is all linked to your astrology. This is all linked to the DNA and the expansion of that. So this is known, the secret of the golden lotus. It's one of its titles is known as the secret of secrets. Out of all of the amazing text, this was like the Bible of the East. This was like the unwritten Bible of the East. This was the verbal transmission that those that knew this, those that understood these processes, like that was the gift of their way into enlightenment, their way into recognizing themselves as the divine. And so, like I said, back then it was more of a philosophical idea of contemplation. With the star codons, this new aspect to the secret of secrets is how it's been woven into the DNA and the spine. And so this is why I call it the blossoming of the light. And this is this beautiful hexagram sequence, which we reveal of how the hexagrams move in a particular way which is different to what's been seen. This allows us to see like how things grow, how things emerge, how that Shakti travels through the hexagrams, how it travels through the ladder. And of course, we could bend that ladder around, and that's the wheel. That's the same wheel that you've been using in the human design and all of these things from the I Ching, is that if we take that ladder, we bend it round, it's the same process. And so we can see whether it's we use a wheel, whether we use the ladder, whether we use our spine, it's all interconnected. And I just think this sense of the mother tree, because we're trying to connect the tree and the roots, and we're trying to blossom into our golden lotus, which is our higher self, essentially, our true self. That's where all of this came through. So, yeah, the blossoming of the light, and this is when we'll get into things like spinal energetics and energy flow, and really, they're simple, profound things that we can do along with the throat chakra activation that we get to work with each week. And again, you'll build up this repertoire of different ways in which you can move the energy through your spine to create the alchemy, to create the gold. So, yeah. So, I don't know if you want to share anything about this, but
Point of this because it's so tangible in one way. So this is the bone structure, the thing that even if we are buried underground for thousands of years, we can still find the fossils and the bones, and also how we went from being animals until we are humans, and we have that kind of ladder, which is all the vertebrae stacked on top of each other in a vertical way from the earth up to the heavens. That is exciting. And then with all the more subtle, which is what you've been speaking about, but also just the Kundalini with all those star codons that were there from the void, from the to the becoming, to the Kundalini, the Tantra, like all of those energetics that you also were mentioning now at the end. So we have the most dense, which is the bones, to the most subtle, which is the energy that we can't see and sometimes not even measure. I believe that is the spiritual energy that we are starting to be able to tap into, is the energy that we can't yet measure. But that's just because science doesn't know how to do it yet, because it's obvious that it's there.
yeah, beautiful. And I think it's so great, right? We can see the sort of the masculine and feminine tracks of like the DNA of the two lines. And really the DNA is that ladder twisted, right? That twisting ladder. And so you can see this sort of beautiful harmonic between all of this and the hexagrams. And even when you look at the pure yin hexagram, right? You can see this sort of sense that there's these rungs are connecting, right? And so even the yang one is that the bar that runs all the way through. So everywhere you turn, you start to see the same patterns, same code, same metaphors. And so, like I said, the secret of the golden flower is what you can actually look up, and you can even buy books on it, and different teachers have had different ways of expressing it. We're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be going through that book or on that level. That was just to show you that that's where this transmission is like, this is the new aspect to add into that philosophy, right? As a sort of a tantric embodiment practice, because this is linked to the DNA, it's linked to our bodies, which they didn't do in that original text. So this is really going to be about how we can work with this on an energetic way, something tangible to focus on each week within our bodies, and to move through. So they're the main components of our embodiment practices. And as I say, even this on its own, as you can see, there's so much to go through and to discuss when we go through the course, that this itself could be a course, but it felt to put it in here as to help us anchor this into form. So I will get onto this part as it's got some attention. It seems over the last few days when I said that the website was up. So star codon emissary, like what is that? I've been in many positions where I've done many courses when I first started, and I was so hungry for lots of different philosophies and energetic practices. I started with trauma breathing, Then I went into energy work and energy healing, and I did all of those things, the crystals, the Atlantis, the Lemurian, the galactic, the I tried pretty much everything I could find. And with all of that investment, all of that time, it can be quite hard to then, if you want to pursue this as a way to that you feel like this is your life path as well, that you want to be able to share things and to help guide people through things. And so within this, at the very end of the transmission, it came through about this an emissary. And an emissary is for me, it's like kind of very galactic, right? So like this sense of like an emissary is the person that sort of like represents the entire transmission. And so that's where the empowerment comes of this is to say that you're invested into this a whole year of your time, your money, your resources, your willingness to go through this process. And then there's a sense of at the end, I wanted there to be something where you then are empowered with this wisdom that you could take forward this into whether you do readings or whether you feel like you want to, or whether you want to help guide people through gates and things like that. If you feel like that's your calling, then I wanted to have this option here so that it does become an investment in yourself where there is this reciprocity that you can start to build from this foundation. And with the connection to the lost octave, to the star codons, that there's a co creation into the collective, right? Because no matter how many hours me and Bella want to try and do and how many year processes we try to do, just by us two alone, it's not going to make that collective weight. And so this is where it's like, well, after that year of going through it and working with you and to make sure that you know all about this, is that then there's an opportunity to apply to do this. And this will be like a sort of a I say like a course, but it's sort of more like a way of certain things that I want you to know in this, especially if you're going to be guiding people through, because as you'll find out, there's some it tackles some very deep processes, and you need to make sure that if you're guiding people and things awaken within them, that you're ready to hold space for that and to guide that through. And so yeah, that's why I wanted to offer this out, that we don't know yet how this is going to be formed. We don't know exactly how it's going to be constructed or what's going to happen, because obviously this transmission's been so fast up to now. And I like the fact that it's going to be, as we move through it and as we get to know you, that will start to formulate like what's going to be the necessary components in order for you to be an emissary of this and take this forward. And that's where the lost octave star codons is there, as I said, as this reciprocity to say thank you for investing, thank you for joining, thank you for going through this deep process, this whole year's sort of initiation of understanding all of this, so that you've got everything that you need. And of course, with this, there'll be things like you'll be provided with images, information. And I sort of see this as that the emissaries, it will be a working thing, right? So we're not quite sure exactly, but maybe we meet at parts of the year, we have conferences, calls, we discuss the next evolutions or making sure everybody understands and how it goes. And to be honest with you, I really hope that I had this thought today that maybe at the end of the year, when we've gone through this process, it would be really great to find somewhere to actually meet in person and perhaps give some of these extra parts about the emissary, and to actually meet the people behind the camera, because there's the power in coming together. So this is really sort of the beginning of this growing family, this growing tribe, and people that are interested in this, that want to take this forward. I just wanted to show that there is something at the end of this golden lotus, this emissary process, that if you feel that you want to take it forward into the world and be supported and a continued aspect of this unfolding, then it's there. And as I say, the lost octave, the star codons, the next projects that are all waiting in the balance, like this is just the beginning of many, many years. I've probably got, well, Bella knows, I've probably got about 10, 15 years worth of courses already laid out, ready to go. And it's just a case of getting around to this, introducing this stuff bit by bit, And so, yeah, there's this longevity of that it's here to stay, here to grow, and we want you to be part of that and empowered by it. So I don't know if there's anything you want to share from your perspective.
For me, this is part of the whole perspective of embodiment. I often say, I'm not here to change the world person by person by person. I do see the synergy, the synergy, the geometry, the fractals of all of us doing it. And for me, with this, first and foremost, we're going to get to spend a year together and really get to know each other on a heart level, on a spiritual level, on an embodiment level, on so many ways. So we're creating a geometry together. And then I can think of nothing better than continue the journey and not just doing it inside of ourselves and in our geometry, but to bring it to the world. And if you feel that that is your calling once you've gone through it for yourself more than anything, that is probably already enough for you to actually be able to bring it. Because what I can say with the experience I have had with the Lost Octave and the different transmissions in the last year and a half is that, how can I say it in a simple way? This is a transmission that is here to be lived and to be shared. And like you were saying, Robert, there's a longevity in this. And I hope that there's going to be recognition in so many of us as we get to do it together. And I always feel that exponential energy when we are more of us that are tuning in. So I feel that this one is also honoring to ourselves, because there's few things in my life that I have bowed to and made a covenant to. Like, I know in myself the honoring of that energy and also what it took for me to say, is it me that is going to bring this forward? And it's sometimes it's a yes and sometimes it's a no. And I think that this is a very, I know you use the word auspicious a lot, Robert, and I almost never use the word auspicious because I'm careful in a language that's on my own to use those like big words. But I think this is an auspicious time in the sense that we get to choose consciously what we stand for and what comes through us and what we are vessels for. And that is so powerful. And for me, we are starting to reveal a lot through this process. And those of us who want to walk it in the world, I'm going to be super excited to support in that process. And even with my background with all the organizational theory, from the heterarchy to the synarchy to all the key, I think there's something new here, a new way of doing it. And that's also why we can't give you all the details of saying, this is exactly how many months, this is exactly how many $100. It's something that we want to be doable if you have committed to the year and walked with us. It shouldn't be something that's unattainable in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, it was just to have there that, as I say, I see when I go through things that I want to, move into. These are investments in my own personal journey, but then of course, if that's part of your life of how you create abundance and how you love to help guide people through these things, or if you're looking to do that, to know that there's this foundation of this organization to do this that's going to continue to reveal new things, to bring new transmissions, and yeah, just an option there for you to see it as an investment to come along. And perhaps over the year you may not have even wanted to do this at the beginning of the year. You just wanted to go on the journey. And then maybe by the end of the journey, you're like, actually, you know what? I feel this is important work and I feel ready to share this out. And there's no ultimatum, there's no pressure, there's no nothing. You're not going to miss out if you don't apply for this with anything. It's just a case of those people that want to do this, then we're going to take that forward into supporting that and to building that sort of tribe of people, which ultimately is me and Bella both share that full line, right? We want to expand and to be part of and help create something that's hopefully going to make a difference in the world. So
Yeah, just one practical thing with this. I feel that together we're going to be able to explore how do we bring this in a way that is digestible, in a way that is correct. If you're somebody who works as a coach or as an astrologer or some kind of organization where you're bringing these kind of esoteric systems to people, like how can this be part of it? And I feel like that's also what we are going to be able to discuss and to explore more when we come to that part, because it hasn't been done before for a fact. I worked with many different systems and I've always tried to find what is the way that I can bring this through to people, right? And not necessarily one by one, but through the kind of setting we're in now, in courses, in groups. How can we digest this together so that we can embody it? So I want that practical aspect to be there too. Okay, you have some kind of profession where this could be a part for each unique being that's there. How can we find the way that for you is the correct to bring it into your process, into your expression?
Yeah. No, beautiful. And so yeah, out of those 52 star codons, it'll be sort of like interesting to see which star codon or codons call you throughout that whole process that you really resonate with, that becomes your sort of what you're an emissary of, right? Like those particular star codons or that grouping or that thing that it's like that's where you can start to construct your own narrative as to what you want to present to people, how you, the theme, right? And that's why I say all of the colors are there, like different themes, different attitudes, different feelings. And so you may fall in love with a certain aspect of this whole transmission and you become an emissary of that. And somebody else really loves the golden lotus work and that becomes most of their main sort of teachings and sharings. And so that's where it builds this entire sort of wholeness of all these different facets, because everybody's going to enjoy different parts of this transmission. So I don't know if you want to just pull up the website, Bella, just to go through just the sort of parts of dates, times again, and your investment in this, and how it all works on that level.
I'm gonna
And then we'll do some questions. But I'm just trying to cover everything here in our sort of last webinar. And so if you can hang on a bit longer, then I will ask any questions that you may have.
Yeah. Here you have more about what it is that we're going to do. Then you also have an overview. Today we spoke about the 52 weeks, the 52 star codons. And like told you before, there is a way of also making this a monthly commitment. So we are meeting every Wednesday and we're keeping the time that we met today. So that is Miami time, Eastern time. That is 4 p.m. in the afternoon. It is 9 p.m. in London. It is 10 p.m. in Paris, a little bit late. And then on the Pacific coast here in the States, it's 1 in the afternoon. So that could be something that you want to consider. If you're in Europe, make sure that the kids are sleeping, you had dinner already, and then you can go off to bed right away. And like we said as well yesterday, even if you are not able to attend live every single time, you are going to be able to have the Facebook group. You can bring questions to the next time we meet. And we're going to speak about sometimes one star code and sometimes two. And there is the time for questions and interactions even between. And depending how many people we have, we're going to find the best way of doing breakout rooms so that you also have the possibility to bring yourself in. And this is one of the questions that were in the Q&A that, of course, it's going to be colored where we come from. We do absolutely invite you to have a completely white slate as you come in and you just dive into the star codon of sovereignty. However, like Katerina was doing in the chat, if you know about the Splenic Center in Human Design, of course you can bring that in because those gates are living there. If you know a lot about Libra and astrology and the archetypes of Libra and even the mythology of Libra or Aphrodite, bring that in. There is no, in that way, right or wrong. This is about association. It's a bit like the mycelium. There are so many associations that we can do. And there's also an invitation to come in with nothing. We do believe that to have the book and to start reading the book where you have the decans and you start to see some of those archetypes is good. To have your basic human design chart. Absolutely. Rob was mentioning there's 26 different activations that you're going to have. That's also something that's completely free. It's not going to hurt you. So that when somebody speaks about a gate or somebody speaks about the decan or an astrological sign or the ruler of the sign, you might want to feel into that. Or you make it more of, okay, I'm going to activate my throat chakra. It's not so important to follow other people on their journeys. Like this is your experience. So you come in and it would be good in the beginning that you have an intention, what you want with this. And then like Rob was saying too, it's going to evolve. A year, thank God, is quite a long time for things to actually become what they're supposed to become. Sometimes the mind wants something, but a year is enough time to let all the different parts tune into what we're doing and allow the journey to be what it wants to be.
Yeah. No, beautiful. And I just want to say as well, like Bella knows, I'm not really sort of, I love to create all of this and to share it. This is like also our commitment to you, right? Is that this is something to stay. This is something that's going to evolve. And we're going to be meeting every single week. And so we're going to be getting to know each other really well and being able to share these experiences. And that's why I say that by the time the year is done and in 52 weeks, we'll, with potentially some breaks of Christmas, etc., in between, that Thanksgiving next year, like we'll be potentially celebrating in person, maybe in some meetup of Thanksgiving of like, wow, we started this a year ago, and then look the journey that we've had, and then there's that option there of like, okay, now I feel ready to step forward to do the emissary, to go out there, or it's like I'm just going to sit with it. Once you've done the course, then it's not like there's not like a time that you have to do the emissary like afterwards. Like it's not like the only requirement is that you have to do the whole of the star codons in order to even apply to become an emissary, because there's no way you can understand it all just in part. So if you want to you work with the star codons for a whole year afterwards, and then you come back and say, okay, I've worked with this, I've gone into it, I've done whatever I needed to do, and now I feel ready to do the emissary. Well, we'll know who you are. We know you've been through that journey. So then that's when you can come on board. So there's no rush to any of this. There's no immediacy to do this. We just want you to experience it, and then I think it'll be self-evident how it blossoms from there as the golden lotus. So yeah, I'm happy to take some questions on this, and yeah, just
Yeah.
to be aware that on yeah by well, interestingly, so by the 11/11, right? So the this price that's up at the moment, this is the early bird price as Bella spoke of. So that it's interesting that on the 11/11 portal, right, is like this sort of choice point, I would say, of like you can get this at this price and through these monthly payments. And it's been really interesting to see because I had a beautiful friend of mine who's I've known her for a long time. She saw this on the first one and she knows me and she's introduced to this and she was like, okay, I'm doing it. And somehow she managed to figure it out. And she's like, boom. So it really is like, I love that because it's like a calling, right? It's like you feel it in your body, whether this feels exciting to you after everything we shared yesterday and the day before, like all of this brand new experience that we get to go on. So yeah, all I can say is follow your heart. The price will change on that sort of portal day. And so yeah, it's but again, the window will stay open a while after that, but of course it will be at a more advanced price. So yeah, it's yeah, of course it's down to you. You've got the replays over the weekend. So yeah.
Yeah, we did answer that one question about the connection to other systems. So this is a little bit similar. Faye is saying, I understand some of it, but feel a little lost with so much, and I want to understand it all. I feel so drawn to the wisdom that you're explaining. So I guess here the question is it too much? Is there anything you want to comment on that again, Rob?
No, just to say that actually it's perfect. Like, if you don't know anything about this, it's perfect because we are going through everything, right? So that just to be 100% clear on this, like you will know the whole system. That's what the Star Codons is. It's a whole system, a whole year to go through it. So if you come into this fresh, like Bella had the blank piece of paper, right? It's like you come into this and you take notes day one and it's like build it up piece by piece. So that's actually, for me, that's actually the best way to go into this. Just fresh, new, open and ready.
And then a question, are the codons activating transits of sun, moon, and the planets?
Yeah. It's the DNA is happening all the time. Right. So yeah, you could say that as it's all connected, yeah, right? So as the planets are moving through the star codons, of course, there's a more intensity, like when the sun moves into that zodiac sign, there's a shift in the frequency and intensity. Yeah, absolutely, it does. For us, when we go through this journey, we'll notice the transit as we move through the year, obviously, but really it's about knowing the system because once you know the system, then you can feel into how activated, how aggravated, how initiated each part gets, and you start to notice the planetary movement through them. But that's like we've got to start understanding the system first, and then you can start to see like how things are activated. Because without having the knowledge of it all and how it's all interconnected, it becomes messy, involving so many different variants. It's like a test, right? Science test. Too many variants, it creates a lot of different anomalies. Too much data to find patterns.
Yeah. Um, Similar question to yesterday. How will you during the course address that the gates mostly are in different positions, whether you work with tropical or true sky? And this is Maria who's asking this again.
Yeah, so it's the same as I said. So imagine you have a pie and you want to chop it up into whatever degrees your system works in. So all is welcome. It works with everything. The DNA and the hexagrams is the whole wheel. So however you want to decide and overlay sidereal, overlay constellational, true sky, whatever you want to call it, whatever different degrees that you use, it doesn't really matter. It's not rigid, right? It's not rigid like that. It's the sense that once you know the DNA, you know the gates, you know the hexagrams, it's only really going to be a difference of maybe one sign, right? That the difference of constellational is or sidereal is like one sign back. It's not like a completely different narrative. It's just like an adjustment. So yeah, like however you want to work with it, whatever you use already. I know there's human design sidereal calculations. So if you want to use that, then use that. It makes no difference to the star codons.
Thank you. And then a question about, is it fine to share the learned knowledge from the course to our community this and use the material for sharing purpose? And possibly when is that okay?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, that's the reason why investing in yourself in this course, right? So y- this is the whole idea that this knowledge is being gifted to you because you've decided to not just see what the star codons are and the gates and the connections just as a thing. It's like it's an important thing to actually have the context to go through this, right? Because having this sort of information and just sharing it, that's why you went through initiation schools, like mystery schools, because it's not to say that these practices are dangerous or these things, knowledge is dangerous. As we can see already, how much confusion can happen with like, is this tropical, sidereal, all like so many nuances. And so, okay, if you invest into this, do you want to give what you've paid for, the knowledge that you're exclusively gifting, just to share it with people? Because out of sort of context, without out of the container of this space, and so, of course, this is sacred knowledge. This is obviously on a technical level, you could say it's copyright of the star codons, right? So, just to share this wisdom, that's something that people pay for. It's not just you deciding to share it. So, other people are exclusively having this information. So, if you decide to share that information with your own community, well, that's going to affect somebody else who's saying, well, oh, well, maybe I didn't even need to pay for it because I could have just got it by somebody else. And that's really where it's all about the star codon of morality, right? Your integrity, your morality. And whenever you go into a system or a process, it's about just being aware that that's outside of a container that can't be held. And some of these transmissions and the things that we go into, they are going into some of the deepest parts of our patternings. We're going through the maternal ancestral mother line. And you think about all of the pain, trauma, emotions, programs, beliefs. It's something that needs to be guided. And that's why it was so great to have Bella on board. That's why I said we need two of us, both of our commitment to you, so that we can hold this container and be there for you as you move through this to make sure that it's going, the ship's going in the right way. So, yeah, I think that I'm happy to let people know, like, that's inside the container, what they can share. And of course, that's all part of our awareness, getting it out there, understand that. But I would just say that this is all part of a very personal process. And then as this evolves, I think it will naturally blossom into what can be shared and how best also to share it with that sense of responsibility. I think giving somebody sort of a loaded gun and just saying, do what it with you, however you want to, it's not the same as somebody being coached into how to shoot at a shooting range. And don't forget, when you read things like The Secret of the Golden Flower, you'll see there that one of the quotes in there, or one of the masters said that this was as powerful as the atomic bomb. Right. So that's a master that shares this transmission, somebody, a sage that's gone through this and understands this, that helps students. And for him to say that this information about just the golden lotus, the golden flower, is as powerful as an atomic bomb, gives you an idea of the sort of the essence of this. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody that has this is feels safe, feels like they have a container, and feels like they have two strong pillars in me and Bella and the transmission to fall back on and to help support guide through this whole year.
Thank you. I see a few comments about the time, especially for those of you that are in Europe. I would love you to contact me and Rob, Facebook, or however you want to contact us, if you are one of these people that really want to join, but the time is a problem. We can't promise you anything right now, but I would like to have a conversation with Rob if the only reason you can't come in is that it's going to be midnight by the time we end every week. So please let us know if you're one of those. And then this is connected, those two questions. So are you sure that 2 hours once a week is enough? And then, is there any value in the course if you would do it without the group support due to the zones or work schedule? So remember again that there is a community, and we'll see depending again on how many we are, if we would rather do WhatsApp or something else. But there is a community where there is a support that is not only 2 hours a week. This is not a 2 hours per week process. There have been mornings where I was on my yoga mat and I was just sitting, staring out in the sky until I pressed play and I recorded 20-minute long voice notes to Rob about some star codon because that was what I was floating in. So yeah, this is not a stop and start process. It's something that will go on and you're going to feel it possibly more powerfully some parts of the year that we are together. But even if you can't come to the calls because they are mostly the presentations, it's definitely worth it to be part of it. And if we are having those breakouts where people actually want to come and do it, we'll make sure that we vote about the time, for example, so that people can join. But that's exactly what we said yesterday. To do it now where there is support is probably better than to wait to the future when maybe there is transcripts or evergreen or whatever it's going to become. This is a way more supported process, whether you can come every time to the live call or not.
Perfect.
Okay. This is a question. This is what I was wondering about out of respect, integrity, and ethics for your hard work and copyrights. It would be helpful to know the additional financial investment to be eligible for the star code to inform the decision. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, put it this way, it's not like it's not gonna be like it's not another whole year's course, right? It's more that you've done the work, right? So you've done the year's work. It's just to that it's a responsibility for us to make sure that you've got everything and that you're prepared to take this because obviously everyone comes from different backgrounds. Some people are already offering readings, they do astrology or they do healing work or whatever it might be. Some people haven't got any of that background. They don't know what it's like to speak to somebody about their deep emotional needs or their beliefs, or they don't know even. We just need to make sure that people can hold the container, that they can take somebody through this, and that they understand it fully. So, as I say, it's like trying to ask, like, how is that going to happen? It's difficult to say. It's yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be something like another whole year's worth of training or anything like that. It's just really just to make sure that you've got everything that you need. And like I said, it's going to become more clear for us as we go through this because this is the first time doing it, right? It's the first exploration. It's like saying, well, what are we going to do by the time we get to this island that we think we're going to get there to? We have no idea what it's going to be like to get there. So I want to make sure that that emissary program is tailor made through the experience of everybody going through this so that then I go, okay, there's these ingredients that we need to make sure that everybody's there, that everybody has the legal understanding of how to protect themselves as well when you're working with other people, and that you've got everything that you need to set yourself up. So whether you're brand new, or whether you've been doing this for years. So we've got to make sure we cover all of that spectrum. But yeah, it's not there to be a course for a huge amount of time. It's just to bring it all together for those that want to take it forward and start to speak about it.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that we know from the beginning that we want to do this after and that it's going to happen and that it's already thought of in terms of the process. So it's something that is important that's going to happen right after and that is going to give you the platform and the support right after to actually go and do this. I was speaking about intention before. It's important when you start something that you have an intention of the direction. And then God knows better. And sometimes he laughs at our plans. But I'm all about orientation and direction. So I want to be able to speak to this in the beginning and not necessarily in a rigid, detailed, regimented way. But this is the intention and this is our intention for you. And then as you're coming in, we're building the direction together. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just to make it's like seeing into the future, just having the okay, what's after people's investment? Like, what else? What's the next thing that can help support this process, evolve this process, and as I say, help get this out into the world. So, yeah, how are we doing for? Have we finished? Have we gone through the question?
Yes, we're good for the questions.
Well, yeah. So we've gone on, and it's so great to try and cover all of this in these 3 webinars. All I can say is this: that yeah, if you see it as an investment, if that's something the emissary thing you're thinking, better said, if you're thinking about that end goal, then it's a sense of that. Yes, it's an investment. It's the whole point of all of this is to try and make this as affordable and to help it make it be a success for you, right? Like if you're helping become a success by investing into this and to helping it being birthed into the world. And so that's why I said it's a reciprocity from us back to you to say, well, okay, now we can support you and help you move into your next phase, your next octave of what you want to do. And so it's really about the heart. If your heart's in it, then see it as an investment. See that in a year's time, you're going to be in a position where you really know this, you've gone through it, and then you're going to be ready to step forward and start to take that out into the world and build your own reciprocity and abundance from this work, right? And a continued evolution. Like I said, it's we are going to plan to meet up to do some sort of conferences, some ongoing things because the DNA, the hexagrams, everything, it's all evolving. And so we need to evolve with it. And that's why I say it's a community, a family to grow. And it's just the beginning. So yeah, it'd be great to have you. And I know some of you has signed up already, and it's really great. I love to see it's been interesting that feeling. The people that have signed up already, it's like they may not even really understand it yet, or they may not even really know the journey, but it's just the calling that's called them. And it's so lovely when I've been in conversation that it's just like, this is what I've been waiting for. This I can see. I don't even know what this fully is yet, but I just know that this is where I'm meant to go. And so if you have that kind of feeling and you're thinking about the emissary thing, at the end of the day, this is an amazing opportunity to go through something brand new, to really do this work and to be supported. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. A whole year's connection with all of you. And yeah, if it's anything like the Lost Octave ride so far that I've been on, it's really going to be quite wild, magical. And yeah, it's probably going to be something that we'll remember for the rest of our lives of it as we move through this year. We are in the biggest moment of change in the world at this point, and for this course to be ready for now in the year of the dragon to come forward, yeah, it's really a special time, special thing to do.
And I just wanted to say if you felt that those 2 days were valuable for you, because we are planting a seed, whether you're continuing or not, please share with people. This is the same link as before. We're going to leave the registration open so that people can register and watch the replays for a few more days, at least until the end of the week or the beginning of next week. So if you feel this was valuable for you, please share it with other people. We are planting the seeds for something new that's coming through our DNA, and also let it sink in. Maybe you want to rewatch today. Just the spine thing, I think it's worth rewatching because as you're spending time with this, it's going to start to unlock things for you. That's what it did for me. Sometimes Rob sent me things I don't even know what I'm looking at. So I'm like sending a heart or like a wow. But there's already things starting to happen in me. So it's not all logical. And that goes back to the question, can you do this if you don't understand everything? I can promise you that I didn't understand everything. And some of the graphics, they have been improved and improved and improved. Some of the things when they came out in the first version, it wasn't that clear. So even just that, even when it wasn't that clear, it did have an effect on me. And then now it's way more clear than it was from the beginning. So this is a playground that it's going to be fun to play together. And thank you, Rob. I feel like we spent the whole entire week together. This was fun to do it this way and to have a 3 day coming back every day and taking up the thread again and continuing to weave. So thank you for doing this.
No, it's so great. And so, as I say, now it's the portal's open, the online platform is up and running, webinars are here, and there's more things to come from me and Bella that we're going to be doing through the Lost Octave. There's more aspects to transmissions and things like that. So, yeah, it's yeah, really great. So I'm really happy that Bella's on board with this, and it's like having two sort of coaches, right? Like coaching you through all of this. And also, we get to also experience this with everyone also, and we get to go through it. So it's this beautiful co-creation. So thank you for being here, Bella. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and on the replays. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out through email, through social media, ask any questions and percolate on it over the weekend, see how you feel. And like I said, if it's, you'll know, I think you'll know if it's for you, if your heart's calling. And yeah, we just welcome you when you decide.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Take
Have a
care.
good weekend. Bye.